My son looked me in the eye and told me I was not welcome at Christmas because I would embarrass his wife's rich parents. He stood in the doorway of the mansion I secretly paid for and closed the door in my face. He thought he was protecting his social status. He did not realize he was signing his financial death warrant. I did not scream. I did not beg. I simply walked away and made one phone call. 2 days later, my phone lit up with 25 missed calls and 14 frantic voicemails. They were not calling to apologize. They were calling because the bank had just sent a foreclosure notice and their perfect life was evaporating before their eyes. My name is Bernard Walsh. I am 72 years old. For the last 5 years, I have played the role of the quiet, retired father living on a pension. I drive a 10-year-old Ford truck with a dent in the bumper. I wear flannel shirts I bought on sale. I live in a small 2-bedroom house on the edge of town. To my neighbors, I am just old Barney, who fishes on weekends and visits his wife Grave on Sundays. To my son Jason and his wife Megan, I am an embarrassment, a relic, a wallet that has run dry. They do not know who I really am. They do not know that the commercial skyline of this city exists because I built it. They do not know that I sold my real estate empire a decade ago for numbers that would make their heads spin. And they certainly do not know that the mortgage company they fear so much is nothing more than a drawer in my private office. I parked my truck in the driveway of the sprawling colonial house in Connecticut. It was a cold December afternoon. The sky was the color of a bruised plum. Snow flurries swirled around the manicured hedges. I reached into the passenger seat and picked up the small velvet box. Inside was a vintage Rolex Daytona. It had belonged to my father. I had it restored for Jason. It was my way of trying to connect, to bridge the gap that had widened since he married Megan. I walked up the stone path. I noticed the salt had not been put down on the ice, a liability lawsuit waiting to happen. I made a mental note to remind Jason. I rang the doorbell. I could hear music inside. Jazz, expensive laughter. The door swung open. Megan stood there. She held a glass of champagne. She looked me up and down. Her eyes lingered on my worn boots. She did not smile. She did not step aside to let me in. Bernard. She said my name like it was a stain on her silk blouse. We were not expecting you until next week. I forced a smile. I just wanted to drop this off for Jason, and to confirm the time for Christmas dinner. Jason appeared behind her. He wore a cashmere sweater that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. He looked nervous. He refused to meet my eyes. Dad. Look. About Christmas. He stopped. He took a sip of his drink. Megan nudged him with her elbow. A sharp, directed movement. Jason cleared his throat. The Hendersons are flying in from New York. Megan parents. It is going to be a very formal affair. Black tie. Very high society. We think it would be better if you did not come this year. The words hung in the frigid air. Better if I did not come. Megan chimed in. Her voice was sickly sweet. You know how my parents are, Bernard. They are very particular about etiquette. We just want everyone to be comfortable. And honestly, you would feel out of place. You do not even own a tuxedo. I looked at my son. I waited for him to defend me. I waited for him to say that his father was welcome at his table regardless of what suit he wore. I waited for the boy I taught to ride a bike to stand up to this woman. Jason looked at his shoes. I am sorry, Dad. Maybe we can do something the week after. Just us. You know. Low key. I looked past them into the foyer. I saw the crystal chandelier hanging from the 20-foot ceiling. I remembered writing the check for that chandelier. I remembered signing the wire transfer for the $300,000 down payment on this house 4 years ago. I remembered the monthly standing order at my bank. $6,500. Every single month. Sent to a shell company called Premier Holdings. Jason thought Premier Holdings was a private lender. He thought he was paying a mortgage. He did not know that I was Premier Holdings. He did not know that every month I transferred money from my left pocket to my right pocket to cover his debt because he could not hold down a job for more than 6 months. I was paying for the roof over their heads. I was paying for the floor they stood on. And they were standing on my floor telling me I was not good enough to walk on it. I tightened my grip on the velvet box. I did not hand it over. I slipped it back into my coat pocket. I understand, I said. My voice was steady. It betrayed nothing. Jason let out a breath he had been holding. Thanks for being reasonable, Dad. I knew you would get it. I get it perfectly. I turned around. I walked down the stone path. I did not look back. I heard the heavy oak door close behind me. The lock clicked. It was the sound of a bridge burning. I got into my truck. My hands were shaking. Not from the cold, from a rage so cold it burned. I sat there for a moment. I looked at the house. It was a beautiful house. I had chosen it. I had negotiated the price. I had inspected the foundation. I had done everything to ensure my son had a good start in life. I promised Catherine on her deathbed that I would look after him. Look after him. Those were her last words. I realized in that moment that I had failed her. I had not looked after him. I had crippled him. I had turned him into a weak, entitled man who let his wife banish his own father. I had cushioned him from reality for too long. It was time to introduce Jason to the real world. I started the engine. I did not drive home. I drove toward the city. The traffic was heavy, but I did not mind. My mind was working with a clarity I had not felt in years. I was not the sad old man they thought I was. I was Bernard Walsh, the man who ate competitors for breakfast in the 80s, the man who built skyscrapers. The sleeping giant had just been poked. I pulled into the underground parking garage of the First Merchant Bank. I did not park in the visitor section. I parked in the reserved spot marked private. The security guard recognized my truck. He nodded and lifted the gate instantly. I took the elevator to the top floor. The doors opened into a plush reception area. The receptionist looked up. Her eyes widened. Mr. Walsh. We were not expecting you. I walked past her. Is Leonard in? She scrambled to grab her phone. I will tell him you are here immediately. I pushed open the double mahogany doors to the corner office. Leonard Katz was on the phone. He was my lawyer and the trustee of my estate. He saw me and hung up on whoever he was talking to without a word. Bernard. To what do I owe this pleasure? Leonard stood up. He was a shark in a 3-piece suit. He was the only person who knew the full extent of my assets. I sat down. I did not take off my coat. I want to make a change to my banking instructions. Leonard pulled out a notepad. He knew that look on my face. He had seen it 30 years ago when I hostilely took over the Remington development. Name it. I want to cancel the standing monthly transfer to Premier Holdings. Leonard stopped writing. He looked up. His pen hovered over the paper. Bernard. That is Jason mortgage payment. If you stop that transfer, the system will show a default. I know. If the internal system registers a default for more than 30 days, it triggers an automatic foreclosure process. That is how you wrote the bylaws for Premier Holdings. You made it ironclad so no one could exploit it. I know what I wrote, Leonard. Leonard leaned back. He studied me. He saw the fire in my eyes. He saw the hurt buried deep beneath the anger. What happened? He uninvited me from Christmas. He told me I was not good enough for his in-laws. He stood in the house I pay for and told me to leave. Leonard closed his eyes for a second. He nodded slowly. So we are teaching him a lesson. No. We are not teaching him a lesson. We are ending the charity. I am done, Leonard. I am done being the silent ATM. I am done being the embarrassment. If he wants to be a big man with a big house and a high society wife, he can pay for it himself. I checked the dates. The payment is due on the 1st. Today is the 20th. I usually send the money 2 weeks early to ensure clearance. Cancel it, I said. Cancel it now. And Leonard. Yes. Revoke the grace period. Leonard raised an eyebrow. That is aggressive. The standard contract allows for a 15-day grace period before notices are sent. Jason does not have a standard contract. He has a rent-to-own agreement disguised as a mortgage. I reviewed the paperwork last night in my head. Clause 14. Clause 14. Leonard whispered. The insolvency clause. Exactly. If the tenant fails to secure funding or misses a scheduled payment, the lender reserves the right to demand full repayment of the principal immediately or vacate the premises within 72 hours. You want to evoke Clause 14 on your son. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked down at the city lights. He is not my son right now. He is a delinquent tenant. And I am a landlord who is tired of being stiffed. Do it. Leonard typed on his computer. The sound of the keys was like gunshots in the quiet office. It is done. The transfer is cancelled. The system will flag the account as past due at midnight tonight. The automated notices will go out tomorrow morning. Good. Bernard. Leonard asked softly. Are you sure? I touched the velvet box in my pocket. I felt the cold metal of the watch. I have never been more sure of anything. I left the bank. I felt lighter. The drive home was peaceful. I stopped at a diner and had a burger and a milkshake. I enjoyed every bite. I went home to my small house. I packed a bag. I grabbed my fishing gear. I have a small cabin up at Lake George. No internet. Spotty cell service. Just me and the water. I turned off my phone. I threw it in the glove compartment. I drove north. For 2 days I sat on the dock. I watched the sun rise and set. I caught 3 trout. I drank coffee from a thermos. I did not think about Jason. I did not think about Megan. I thought about Catherine. I thought about how much she would have hated to see me like this, but how much she would have hated to see Jason become what he was. She raised him better. We both did. Somewhere along the way, the money I gave him rotted his ambition. It was time to cut the rot out. On the evening of the second day, I packed up my gear. I drove back down this mountain. As soon as I hit the highway, the cell tower picked up my signal. My phone vibrated. It vibrated again. And again. It danced across the dashboard. It buzzed for 5 solid minutes. I pulled over at a rest stop. I picked up the phone. 25 missed calls. 14 voicemails. 30 text messages. Most were from Jason. Some were from Megan. One was from Leonard. I opened the first voicemail from Jason. It was time-stamped yesterday morning. Dad. Call me. There is a mistake with the bank. We got a notification letter. It says the payment was missed. You must have forgotten to transfer the funds. Call me back so we can fix this. His voice was calm. Annoyed, but calm. He thought it was a clerical error. He thought his old man had a senile moment. I played the second message. Time-stamped yesterday afternoon. Dad. Pick up the phone. The bank sent another email. They are talking about acceleration of debt. They say I owe the full balance. $1.2 million. What is going on? Did you change banks? Call me. The panic was starting to creep in. I skipped to the 5th message. Megan. Her voice was shrill. It grated on my ears. Bernard. This is not funny. We have people coming in 3 days. The bank posted a notice on our front door. A physical notice. The neighbors saw it. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Fix this. Now. I smiled. A cold, hard smile. They were worried about humiliation. They had no idea what was coming. I played the next one. Jason again. He was crying. Dad, please. They locked the accounts. Premier Holdings froze everything. They are invoking Clause 14. I called the number on the letterhead and it goes to a law firm. They said they represent the owner and they have instructions to proceed with eviction. Dad, where are you? I listened to every single message. I listened to their arrogance turn to confusion. I listened to their confusion turn to fear. And finally, I listened to their fear turn to absolute desperation. I did not call them back. I called Leonard. He answered on the first ring. Bernard. I assume you saw the activity. I did. Your son showed up at my office this morning. He demanded to see the owner of Premier Holdings. What did you tell him? I told him the owner is a silent investor who values his privacy and strict adherence to contract terms. I told him the investor is currently unavailable and has given strict orders to enforce the contract. How did he take it? He threw a chair. Security had to escort him out. He is claiming he has rights. He is claiming he owns the house. Does he know? No. He still thinks Premier Holdings is some faceless conglomerate. He has no idea it is you. He thinks you are just the guy who helps with the monthly payments. He thinks you cut him off, and that caused the default, but he does not know you are the one holding the axe. Good. Keep it that way. Bernard. The Hendersons arrive tomorrow. Jason and Megan are trying to hide this from them. They tore the notice off the door. They are pretending everything is fine. Let them pretend. It will make the fall that much harder. What is the next move? Proceed with the eviction filing. And Leonard. Yes. Send the sheriff. You want the sheriff to serve the papers while the in-laws are there. I want the sheriff to serve the papers during dinner. That is cold, Bernard. They uninvited me to dinner, Leonard. I am just making sure I am part of the conversation. I hung up, I started the truck. I drove the rest of the way home in silence. When I got to my small house, I made a cup of tea. I sat in my armchair. I looked at the photo of Catherine on the mantelpiece. I am sorry, darling, I whispered. But he needs to learn. He needs to become a man. And the only way to make a man out of him now is to strip away the boy. My phone rang again. It was Jason. I stared at the screen. I let it ring. I imagined him standing in that marble foyer. I imagined Megan pacing back and forth. I imagined the expensive decorations and the towering Christmas tree. I imagined the lies they were telling themselves. They thought this was a mistake. They thought they could talk their way out of it. They thought money would solve it. They were about to learn that money given is not money earned. I picked up the phone. I did not answer. I sent a text message. I am busy. Do not call again. I blocked his number. I blocked Megan. Then I went to sleep. I slept like a baby. The next morning I woke up to a banging on my front door. I put on my robe. I walked to the door. I looked through the peephole. It was Jason. He looked terrible. His eyes were red. His hair was a mess. He was wearing the same clothes he had on in the last voicemail. Megan was with him. She was wearing sunglasses, but I could see the puffiness of her face. I opened the door. Dad. Jason pushed past me. He stormed into my small living room. You have to help us. Megan followed him in. She looked around my house with that same disdain she showed 3 days ago. It is a disaster, Bernard, she said. A complete disaster. The bank is crazy. They are demanding everything. You have to loan us the money. You have to pay off the mortgage. I tightened the belt of my robe. I walked to the kitchen. I started the coffee pot. I thought you wanted privacy, I said. I thought I was an embarrassment. This is not the time for that, Jason shouted. He was shaking. My in-laws land in 4 hours. If they find out we are being foreclosed on, they will kill me. Megan's father will cut us off. So that was it. It was not about the house. It was about the image. It was about the next gravy train. I poured a cup of coffee. I did not offer them any. I cannot help you, I said calmly. What do you mean you cannot help? Megan snapped. You have retirement savings. You sold that business years ago. You must have something stashed away in this dump. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had driven a wedge between me and my son. I spent it, I said. You what? Jason stared at me. I spent it. Traveling, medical bills, life, the monthly payments I was sending you. That was the last of it. The well is dry, Jason. I lied. I had millions in liquid assets sitting in accounts they knew nothing about. But they did not deserve the truth. Jason's face went white. You mean, you are broke? I am on a fixed income now, son. Just like you said, an old relic. Megan let out a scream of frustration. I knew it. I knew he was useless. She turned on Jason. You told me he was loaded. You told me he would cover us. I thought he was. Jason stammered. He always paid. I took a sip of coffee. So you are saying you cannot pay the mortgage without my help? We cannot pay anything, Jason admitted. We have no savings. The credit cards are maxed out for the wedding, for the furniture, for the car leases. So you are broke too, I said. We are not broke, Megan hissed. We are illiquid. There is a difference. Not to the bank there isn't, I said. Jason grabbed my arm. Dad, you have to do something. Take a loan. Mortgage this place. Anything. We need $50,000 just to stop the immediate eviction proceedings. You want me to mortgage my home to save yours? Yes, Jason said without hesitation. Yes. You are my father. You have to. I looked at his hand on my arm. I looked at his desperate, selfish face. I pulled my arm away. No. What? No. I will not mortgage my home. I will not take a loan. I will not give you another dime. You uninvited me from your life. You made it clear where I stand. Now you can stand on your own 2 feet. Dad, please. The Hendersons. I do not care about the Hendersons, I said. And frankly, I do not care about your house. It is not your house, Jason. You never earned it. You played house in a mansion I paid for, and now the game is over. Megan stepped forward. She got in my face, you selfish old man. If we lose that house, we lose everything. We will be on the street. Then you better start looking for a smaller apartment, I suggested. I hear there are vacancies downtown. Get out, I said. They stood there, stunned. They had never heard me raise my voice. They had never seen me say no. I walked to the door. I held it open. Get out, before I call the police. Jason looked at me. He looked like he wanted to hit me, but he saw something in my eyes that stopped him. He saw the man who used to run construction sites. He saw the iron. He grabbed Megan's hand. Come on. He is useless. We will figure this out. We will call the lawyer back. We will stall them. They walked out. I watched them get into their leased Range Rover. I watched them drive away. They were going back to the mansion to pretend. They were going back to put on a show for the in-laws. They did not know that I had instructed Leonard to reject any stall tactics. They did not know that the sheriff was already scheduled. I closed the door. I went back to my coffee. It was going to be a very interesting Christmas. I looked at the calendar on the wall. December 23rd. The Hendersons were arriving today. The dinner was tomorrow night. Christmas Eve. I decided I needed a new suit. If I was going to crash a party, I might as well look the part. I drove to the city. I went to my old tailor. He was surprised to see me. Mr. Walsh, it has been years. I need a tuxedo, Giovanni, and I need it by tomorrow afternoon. He measured me. I had lost a little weight, but my shoulders were still broad. We will make you look like a king, Mr. Walsh. No, I said. Make me look like the owner. I spent the rest of the day gathering documents. I went to the bank. I printed out the entire transaction history for the last 4 years, every single transfer. I printed out the deed to the house. I printed out the incorporation papers for Premier Holdings, showing me as the sole proprietor. I put everything in a leather folder. I called Leonard. Is everything set for tomorrow? The sheriff is confirmed for 8 p.m. Leonard said. I will be there as well with the eviction notice and the termination of the lease. Good. Meet me at the corner of their street at 7:55. Bernard, are you sure you want to be there when it happens? It is going to be ugly. I want to look them in the eye, Leonard. I want them to know exactly who did this. I hung up. I sat in my living room. The silence was heavy. I missed Catherine. She would have told me to forgive them. She would have told me to write another check. But Catherine never saw them like this. She never saw the disdain. She never saw the cruelty. I was doing this for her too. I was saving our son from himself. The only way to save him was to let him hit rock bottom, and I was about to cut the rope. The next day passed slowly. I polished my shoes, I shaved, I dressed in the tuxedo. It fit perfectly. I looked in the mirror. I did not look like old Barney the fisherman. I looked like Bernard Walsh. I drove to the neighborhood. The snow was falling softly. The houses were lit up with Christmas lights. It looked like a postcard. I pulled up to the corner. Leonard was waiting in his sedan. A sheriff patrol car was parked behind him. I got out of my truck. Leonard rolled down his window. Ready. Ready. We walked toward the house. The windows were glowing. I could see figures moving inside. I could see the Hendersons. He was tall with silver hair. She was wearing a sequined dress. They were laughing. Jason and Megan were pouring drinks. They were smiling. They were acting. They thought they had stalled the bank. They thought they had more time. They had no idea their time had run out. I walked up the stone path. The sheriff followed us. I rang the bell. The music stopped. I heard footsteps. The door opened. It was Jason. He was holding a glass of wine. He saw me. He saw the tuxedo. He saw Leonard. And then he saw the sheriff. His glass slipped from his hand. It shattered on the floor. Red wine splashed everywhere. Like blood. Dad. Hello, son, I said. Merry Christmas. I stepped inside. The sheriff followed. The room went silent. Megan froze. The Hendersons turned around. Who is this? Mrs. Henderson asked. She looked at the sheriff. Is there a problem? I walked into the center of the room. I stood under the chandelier I paid for. There is no problem, I said. I am just here to collect the rent. Megan rushed forward. Her face was pale. Get out, she hissed. Get out right now. You are ruining everything. I ignored her. I looked at the Hendersons. Good evening. I am Bernard Walsh, Jason father, and the landlord of this property. The landlord. Mr. Henderson frowned. Jason told us he owned this house. Jason lied, I said. I opened the leather folder. I took out the deed. I placed it on the coffee table. Jason has never owned this house. He has been renting it from a company called Premier Holdings. For the last 4 years, he has not paid a single dime of rent. I have. What are you talking about? Jason shouted. You are crazy. Premier Holdings is a bank. I looked at my son. I looked him dead in the eye. I am Premier Holdings Jason. The room spun. I could see it on his face. The realization. The horror. You, me. I created the company to buy the house so you could pretend to be a big shot. I paid the mortgage every month so you could lease the Range Rover and buy the designer clothes. I supported you. And then I turned to Megan. And you slapped me in the face with your ingratitude. You uninvited me from my own house. You treated me like a beggar. Well, the beggar is calling in the debt. Leonard stepped forward. He handed Jason the papers. This is a notice of immediate eviction pursuant to Clause 14 of your lease agreement. You are in default. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. The sheriff stepped forward. I am here to ensure that the notice is served and to keep the peace. You have been served, Mr. Walsh. Mrs. Henderson gasped. She looked at Megan. Is this true? Do you not own this house? Megan was shaking. She could not speak. Mr. Henderson stood up. He looked at Jason with disgust. You told me you were a partner in a firm. You told me your assets were diversified. You are telling me you are living on an allowance from your father. Jason looked down. He was crying, Dad. Please, not now, not in front of them. This is exactly the time, Jason, I said. You wanted a formal affair. You wanted high society. Well, high society pays its bills. I looked around the room. I am canceling the lease. I am selling the house. And I am cutting off the funds. As of this moment, you are on your own. I turned to the Hendersons. I apologize for the interruption. Please enjoy your dinner. I believe Jason has paid for the catering. At least I hope he has. I walked to the door. Bernard! Megan screamed. You can't do this. We have nowhere to go. I stopped. I looked back at her. I hear the Motel 6 has vacancies. It is very affordable. I walked out into the snow. The door closed behind me. I did not feel sad. I felt clean. I walked to my truck. Leonard was waiting by his car. That was intense, Leonard said. It was necessary. What now? Now I go fishing. I got in my truck. I drove away. I left them in the ruins of their own making. I left them to explain the lies. I left them to face the reality I had shielded them from for too long. I drove back to my small house. I sat in my chair. I watched the snow fall. I was alone. But I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like a father who had finally done his job. It was 10 o'clock at night when the pounding started. It was not a polite knock. It was not a neighborly tap. It was an assault on the wood of my front door. I was sitting in my recliner reading a book about fly fishing. The house was quiet. My tea was hot. The silence of my modest life was exactly how I liked it. I did not rush. I placed a bookmark in my page. I set my mug on the coaster. I stood up slowly, feeling the stiffness in my knees that comes with 72 years of life on construction sites. The pounding continued. It was frantic now, accompanied by the muffled sound of shouting. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Jason and Megan practically fell into my living room. The cold night air rushed in behind them, carrying the scent of snow and expensive perfume. They looked out of place in my small entryway. Jason was wearing a designer coat that was unbuttoned, revealing his disheveled suit. Megan was in a fur stole, her face twisted into a mask of pure panic and rage. My living room is small, the carpet is old, the furniture is practical. Standing there amidst my simple life, they looked like aliens who had crash-landed on a planet they deemed beneath them. Do you have any idea what time it is? I asked. I did not raise my voice. I did not offer them a seat. Megan ignored the question. She stepped forward, her heels digging into my rug. She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her purse and shook it in my face. Do you see this? She screamed. Do you see what was taped to our front door when we got home from dinner? A foreclosure notice, Bernard. A bright orange sticker telling the whole neighborhood that we are deadbeats. I looked at the paper. I did not need to read it. I knew exactly what it said. I had instructed Leonard to have it posted an hour ago. It looks like a notice of default, I said calmly. Megan let out a sound that was half laugh, half shriek. My parents land in 12 hours. 12 hours, Bernard. The Hendersons are coming from Manhattan. If they pull up to the driveway and see a sheriff lock on the door or a notice on the glass, do you have any idea how humiliated we will be? We will be the laughingstock of the country club. I walked past her to the kitchen. I poured the rest of my tea down the sink. I fail to see how this is my problem. Jason stepped in front of me. He looked desperate. The arrogance from 3 days ago was gone, replaced by the sweaty fear of a man watching his house of cards collapse. Dad, stop it. Stop playing games. We called the number on the notice. They said Premier Holdings has accelerated the debt. They demanded the full balance. $1.5 million. You have to call them. You have to wire the money. You have to fix this tonight. I turned and leaned against the counter. I crossed my arms over my chest. I cannot do that, Jason. Why not? You paid it every month for 4 years. You set this up. You made us dependent on this arrangement. I corrected him. I did not make you dependent. I offered you a hand up. You turned it into a hammock. And 3 days ago, you looked me in the eye and told me I was an embarrassment. You told me my presence would ruin your perfect Christmas. That was just stress, Dad. Jason ran a hand through his hair. You know how Megan gets when her parents visit. We did not mean it. Oh, you meant it, I said. You meant every word. You said I was not good enough for high society. So I did what you asked. I stepped back. I stopped interfering. I stopped paying. I am respecting your privacy, Jason. Megan stormed into the kitchen. Her face was red. Respecting our privacy. You are ruining our lives. You are a selfish, bitter old man. You are sitting here in this dump hoarding your money through while we are about to lose everything. This dump, I said, looking around my clean, well-maintained kitchen, is paid for. I own every nail and every board. Can you say the same about your palace? Jason slammed his hand on the counter. The cups in the cabinet rattled. Dad, you have to have the money. You sold Walsh Development 10 years ago. It was the biggest deal in the state. $30 million. Where is it? Where is the money? I looked at my son. I looked at the man who stood in my kitchen demanding a fortune he had never earned. He thought I was a miser. He thought I was sitting on a dragon hoard of gold just to spite him. He did not know, he did not remember. 10 years ago, I sold my company not because I wanted to retire, but because Jason had called me from a warehouse in Las Vegas. He was crying. He had gotten involved with people who did not use lawyers to settle disputes. He had gambled away money he did not have. $2 million in 3 nights. They were going to kill him. I liquidated everything. I sold my life work in a fire sale to get the cash fast. I flew to Vegas with a duffel bag. I bought my son life back. I paid off the bookies. I paid off the casinos. And then I paid for the rehab, and the lawyers for the drunk driving charges that followed, and the settlements for the businesses he started and crashed. I had spent nearly $20 million cleaning up Jason messes over the last decade. The rest I had put into the trust that bought his house. The money I had left was my own. It was my safety net. And he wanted that too. But I could not tell him that. I could not tell him that his inheritance was already spent on his survival. If I told him, he would know I saved him, and he would never learn to save himself. I spent it, I lied. You spent $30 million, Jason shouted. On what? Look at you. You wear boots from Walmart. You drive a truck with rust on the wheel wells. You do not travel. You do not buy art. Where did it go? Bad investments, I said. The market is a fickle thing. Megan scoffed. You are lying. You have it stashed somewhere. You are just punishing us because we didn't want you at the party. You are petty. I walked out of the kitchen back into the living room. I picked up my book. Think what you want. But the bank is closed. My checkbook is closed. And frankly, my patience is closed. Jason followed me. He grabbed my shoulder and spun me around. For a second, I saw violence in his eyes. He was cornered. He was terrified. Dad, listen to me. I cannot lose that house. It is not just about living there. I used the address to get investors for my new startup. If they find out I am being evicted for non-payment, they will pull their funding. I will be ruined. I will go to jail for fraud, Dad. I listed the house as an asset. My heart stopped for a beat. You did what? I listed the house as my asset. On the loan applications, I told them I owned it free and clear. I stared at him. The stupidity was breathtaking. The house was in the name of the trust. He had committed bank fraud. He had committed securities fraud, and he wanted me to bail him out again. This was the pattern. He dug a hole. I threw him a rope. He used the rope to hang himself. Not this time. That sounds like a serious legal matter, Jason. I said, my voice cold as ice. I suggest you get a lawyer. You have to bail me out. Just this once. Please. 50,000. That is all we need to stall the foreclosure for a month. Just enough to get through the holidays. Enough to get the Hendersons out of town. I sat down in my chair. I opened my book. I do not have $50,000 for you, Jason. Megan let out a scream of frustration. She grabbed a vase from the side table. A cheap ceramic vase Catherine had bought at a flea market. She threw it against the wall. It shattered into 100 pieces. I hate you, she screamed. I hope you die alone in this miserable box. I looked at the shards of the vase. I looked at my daughter-in-law. Get out, I said. We are not leaving until you write a check, Jason said. He sat down on my sofa. He crossed his arms. We are staying right here. I reached for the phone on the side table. I am dialing 911, I said. I will tell them there are intruders in my home who are refusing to leave. I will tell them one of them had just destroyed my property. The sheriff is about 10 minutes away. Jason's eyes widened. You would call the cops on your own son. You committed fraud, Jason. You are trespassing. And you just threatened me. Yes, I will call the cops. He looked at me. He searched my face for any sign of weakness, any sign of the father who used to fly to Vegas with a duffel bag of cash. He found nothing but stone. He stood up. Come on, Megan, he said, his voice shaking. He is crazy. He has lost his mind. Megan looked at me with pure venom. You will regret this, Bernard. You will regret this when you are old and sick and have no one. I am already old, I said. And tonight I realized I already have no one. They stormed out. Jason slammed the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. I sat there in the silence. I looked at the broken vase. I did not get up to clean it. I let it lie there, a monument to the night my family finally broke. I picked up my phone. I did not call the police. I sent a text to Leonard. They just left. Proceed with the plan. No mercy. I turned off the lamp. I sat in the dark. Jason thought the problem was money. He thought the problem was the house. He did not realize the problem was him. He had mentioned fraud. He had mentioned investors. I knew what I had to do next. I had to protect the trust. If he had listed the house as an asset, I needed to make sure the authorities knew he had no claim to it before he dragged my remaining assets down with him. I was not just evicting him. I was about to expose him. The visit had been forced, but the outcome was voluntary. They had shown me exactly who they were, and tomorrow I would show them exactly who I was. I stood in the darkened hallway, listening to the silence of my house. The shattered vase lay on the floor, a jagged reminder of the violence that had just occurred. I walked toward the front door to lock the deadbolt. My hand was on the brass latch when I heard them. They had not left. They were standing on my front porch, just on the other side of the thin wood door. The cold winter air carried their voices through the cracks. They were whispering, but in the stillness of the night, their words were as clear as a bell. I stopped breathing. I leaned closer to the wood. "He is not going to budge, Jason." Megan's voice was a hiss of pure venom. "He is stubborn and he is spiteful. We are not going to get the money by asking nicely." I waited for Jason to defend me. I waited for him to say that we should just leave, that we should figure it out on our own. Instead, I heard him sigh. A weak, pathetic sound. "So what do we do?" "The bank is not going to wait. The Hendersons are going to be here in the morning. If we do not have $50,000 by Monday, we are finished." "There is Plan B," Megan said. There was a silence. I could imagine Jason's face. I could imagine the gears turning in his slow, desperate mind. "You mean Stevens?" Jason asked. "Yes, I mean Stevens. He owes us. You covered for him during that malpractice suit last year. He will write whatever we want." I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the drafty door. Stevens, Dr. Marcus Stevens. He was a golfing buddy of Jason, a man with a shiny practice and a shaky reputation. "We cannot do that, Megan." Jason's voice wavered. "That is nuclear. Do you have a better idea? Do you want to be homeless? Do you want to tell my father that you are a fraud? Look at him, Jason. He lives in this tiny house. He hoards his money. He threw us out in the snow. He is erratic. He is aggressive. He is just angry, Megan. He is not crazy, is he? He claims he spent $30 million. He claims he is broke, but refuses to mortgage a paid-off house to help his only son. He is delusional. He is paranoid. Those are clinical symptoms, Jason." I gripped the doorknob. My knuckles turned white. They were not just talking about money anymore. They were building a narrative. If Dr. Stevens signs an affidavit stating that Bernard Walsh is suffering from early-onset dementia and is a danger to his own financial well-being, we can file for emergency temporary guardianship. Megan said it so smoothly. She had rehearsed this. "We can get an emergency court order. It freezes his assets. It puts you in control as the next of kin. We can access the accounts to pay the mortgage. We can sell this dump he lives in. We can put him somewhere safe where he cannot hurt us or himself anymore." Guardianship. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. They wanted to strip me of my rights. They wanted to declare me incompetent. They wanted to lock me away in a facility and drain my life savings while I rot. It was not just theft. It was an execution. "But it will take time," Jason said. "Not with an emergency order. We can have it by Monday morning. We just need to trigger an incident, something that proves he is unstable. Calling the cops on his own son tonight. That is a good start. We can tell the judge he was hallucinating. We can say he threatened us with a weapon." Who are they going to believe? A successful young couple or a lonely old man who shouts at his family on Christmas? I stepped back from the door. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I felt sick, physically sick. I had raised this boy. I had wiped his nose. I had taught him to fish, and now he was standing on my porch plotting to erase me. "Do it," Jason said. "Call Stevens in the morning." They walked down the steps. I heard the car door slam. I heard the engine roar to life. I did not move for a long time. I stared at the door. They thought I was a senile old man. They thought I was erratic. They thought I was vulnerable. They had made a fatal calculation error. They assumed my silence was weakness. They assumed my simple life was a sign of decay. I went to the kitchen. I did not turn on the lights. I drank a glass of water standing over the sink. My hands were steady now. The shock had passed, replaced by a cold, mechanical resolve. They wanted to play the medical game. Fine. I would play it better. I did not sleep. I spent the night organizing my files. I pulled my medical records from the last 5 years. Clean. Perfect. I printed out my investment logs, complex financial maneuvers that required a razor-sharp mind. At 6 in the morning, I shaved. I put on my best suit. I drove into the city. I did not go to my usual doctor. I went to the University Research Hospital, the best in the state. I walked into the neurology department at 7:30. I requested a comprehensive cognitive evaluation. I told them I was updating my estate planning and required absolute proof of competency to prevent future litigation. It was the truth. I paid out of pocket for an expedited review. The first doctor was a woman named Dr. Aris. She was young, brilliant, and thorough. She put me through a battery of tests that would have exhausted a man half my age. Memory recall, pattern recognition, logic puzzles. I sat in the sterile room. I focused. I channeled every ounce of my old business acumen. I memorized lists of words. I solved complex equations in my head. I drew complex geometric shapes from memory. Dr. Aris looked at my results. She looked at me. Mr. Walsh, your cognitive processing speed is in the 99th percentile for your age group. Frankly, you are sharper than most of my grad students. I need that in writing, I said. And I need you to certify that I am free of any signs of dementia, Alzheimer, or cognitive decline. She wrote the report. I took it. I was not done. At 10 o'clock, I went to a forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Thorne, a man who testified in high-profile criminal cases. He knew how to spot a liar. He knew how to spot a manipulator. I sat on his leather couch. We talked for 2 hours. We talked about politics. We talked about the real estate market. We talked about history. He was probing, looking for cracks, looking for paranoia, looking for the erratic behavior Megan claimed I had. I told him exactly why I was there. I told him my son was attempting a hostile takeover of my life. Dr. Thorne took notes. He watched my body language. At the end of the session, he handed me a sealed letter. In my professional opinion, you are fully competent, oriented, and demonstrating high-level executive functioning. Any claim of incapacity would be medically baseless. I took the letter. 2 down. I went to a third specialist, a geriatrician who specialized in elder abuse cases. I wanted a physical exam. I wanted documentation that I was not frail. I wanted proof that I was physically capable of caring for myself. By 3:00 in the afternoon, I had a folder thick with medical evidence. I had brain scans. I had psychological evaluations. I had blood work. I sat in my truck in the hospital parking lot. I looked at the papers. These were my shield. If Jason and Megan tried to drag me before a judge, I would not just defend myself. I would humiliate them. I would present irrefutable proof from the top specialists in the state while they waved a forged note from a corrupt strip mall doctor. I took out my phone. I took photos of every document. I emailed them to Leonard. I called him. Bernard. Leonard answered. I got the files. This is impressive. Why did you do this? Because I heard them, Leonard. I heard them last night. They are planning to file for guardianship. They are going to use a doctor named Stevens to claim I am incompetent. Leonard cursed softly. That is a dirty play. That is the dirtiest play in the book. It is. And now we are ready for it. If they file, if they even whisper the word guardianship to a judge, I want you to drop these documents on the bench. And then I want you to file a counter motion for malicious prosecution and conspiracy to commit fraud. I will have the paperwork drafted tonight. Bernard, this changes things. This is not just a financial dispute anymore. This is war. They wanted a war, Leonard. I am just bringing the ammunition. I hung up. I drove back toward my home. I felt tired, but it was a good tired. The tired of a man who has reinforced the walls of his fortress. I stopped at the hardware store on the way. I bought a new deadbolt, a heavy-duty one, and I bought 4 security cameras, the kind that record audio and upload to the cloud instantly. I drove past Jason's house. I saw the rental cars in the driveway. The Hendersons had arrived. I saw shadows moving in the windows. I imagined them drinking wine. I imagined Megan smiling that fake smile, pretending her life wasn't crumbling. I imagined Jason sweating in his expensive suit, wondering when the hammer would drop. They were celebrating Christmas Eve. They were toasting to family. They had no idea that while they were clinking glasses, I had spent the day ensuring that their plan B would blow up in their faces. I went home. I installed the cameras, one on the porch, one in the living room, one in the kitchen. If they came back, I would have it all in 4K resolution. I sat down in my chair. I looked at the folder of medical records. It was a strange thing to have to prove your own sanity. It was a violation. It made me feel small for a moment. It made me question everything. Was I hard to live with? Was I difficult? I looked at Catherine's photo. No. I was not difficult. I was just done being used. I checked my email. Leonard had replied, received and filed. I also did a background check on Dr. Stevens. He has 2 reprimands from the medical board for overprescribing. If he signs anything against you, we will have his license by lunch. I smiled. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into it. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve, the night of the big dinner, the night they wanted me to stay away from. I looked at the tuxedo hanging on my bedroom door. They wanted to declare me incompetent. They wanted to say I didn't know what was happening. When I walked into that party tomorrow night, I would be the most lucid person in the room, and I would deliver a reality check they would never forget. I sat at my kitchen table watching the feed from the security cameras I had just installed. The screen showed my empty porch. The snow was picking up, drifting against the door I had slammed in my son's face the night before. It was quiet. Too quiet. My phone rang. It was Leonard. I checked the time. It was 2 in the afternoon. Leonard never called in the afternoon unless something was burning. I picked up. "Tell me," I said. "Bernard." Leonard's voice was tight. "You were right to secure those medical records. But that is not why I am calling. We just got a flag on the property title." My hand tightened on the phone. A flag. That meant someone was trying to touch the deed. "Explain." About an hour ago, a credit inquiry was run on the house. A hard pull. It came from a place called Quick Cash Capital. It is a hard money lender downtown. The kind of place that charges 20% interest and breaks kneecaps if you are late. I closed my eyes. I knew exactly what that meant. Hard money lenders were the last stop for the desperate. They did not care about credit scores. They cared about collateral. "Jason," I said. "Yes." Jason walked into their office at noon. He applied for an emergency loan of $50,000. He offered the house as collateral. I let out a long, slow breath. $50,000. The exact amount he needed to stall the eviction. He was trying to mortgage the house to pay the rent on the house. It was a snake eating its own tail. Did they give it to him? No. Leonard let out a dry laugh. They ran a title search. And guess what they found? They found the trust. Exactly. They found the Catherine Walsh Revocable Trust. They found that Jason Walsh has 0 equity in the property. He does not own a single brick. He screamed at the loan officer Bernard. He told them there was a mistake. He told them his father gave him the house. He made a scene. I leaned back in my chair. I looked at the photo of Catherine on the wall. He never read the contract, Leonard. 4 years ago, when I handed him that stack of papers, he did not read a single word. He just saw the keys. He just saw the address. He signed his name 20 times and asked when the pool guy was coming. He signed a rent-to-own agreement, a lease with an option to purchase after 10 years of on-time payments. He was a tenant, a glorified tenant with a very generous landlord, and he just tried to mortgage my property without my consent. That is fraud, Bernard, Leonard said. Attempted mortgage fraud. It is a felony. If that lender wanted to press charges, they could. They won't, I said. They just kicked him out. But Leonard, this gives us leverage. It gives us the nuclear option. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the gray sky. I remembered the day I bought that house. I remembered standing in the empty foyer with the realtor. I had the check in my pocket. I had debated putting the house in Jason's name. It would have been easier. It would have been a clean gift. But then I remembered the warehouse in Vegas. I remembered the businesses he started that evaporated into thin air. I remembered the way money burned a hole in his pocket. If I gave him the deed, he would leverage it. He would sell it to fund some pipe dream. He would lose the roof over his head in a poker game. So I protected him from himself. I put it in the trust. I made myself the landlord. I kept the power so he could keep the home. And he hated me for it. Leonard, I said. He breached the contract. He did. Clause 9. Unauthorized encumbrance. Any attempt by the tenant to use the property as collateral for a loan results in immediate termination of the lease. Not just eviction, I said. Termination. Yes. The difference is subtle but important. Eviction is for non-payment. It takes time. Termination for breach of contract is immediate. The lease is void. He has no right to be there. He is trespassing. I looked at the snow falling harder now. It was covering the world in white. It looked clean. It looked pure. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, I said. I know. Send the notice, Leonard. Bernard. It is Christmas. He tried to steal the equity in my house, Leonard. He tried to pawn my property to a loan shark because he is too proud to admit he is broke. He crossed the line. Send the notice. I want the termination effective immediately. And I want the vacate date set for December 25th, Christmas Day. Yes, he wanted a Christmas without me. Now he can have a Christmas without a house. There was a silence on the line. Leonard was a lawyer. He was used to sharks. He was used to killers in suits. But this was different. This was personal. I will draft it, he said. I will have it served with the sheriff tomorrow night. Add one more thing, Leonard. What? Attach a copy of the title deed. Highlight the owner name. I want him to see it. I want him to see Catherine's name. I want him to know that he didn't just try to rob me. He tried to rob his mother memory. I hung up. I went to the kitchen. I made a sandwich. I ate it standing up. I felt cold. Not on the outside, but on the inside. It was the cold of a man who has realized that his son is a stranger. Jason had walked into that lender office today and lied. He had looked a man in the face and claimed he owned a $1.5 million home. He had been willing to risk everything for $50,000. He was desperate, and a desperate man is dangerous. My phone pinged. It was a notification from the security camera. Motion detected on the front porch. I pulled up the app. It was not Jason. It was a courier. He dropped a large envelope on the mat and walked away. I waited until he was gone. I unlocked the door and retrieved the package. It was from the university hospital, the hard copies of my medical evaluations. I opened the folder. I looked at the brain scans, the charts, the doctor's signatures. Patient exhibits superior cognitive function. No evidence of dementia. Fully competent to manage financial and personal affairs. I laid them out on the table next to the picture of Catherine. They were my armor. Jason was running around town trying to prove I was crazy. He was trying to find a corrupt doctor to sign his lies. He was trying to mortgage a house he did not own. He was flailing. He was drowning. And I was the one who had pulled the plug on the drain. I sat there for a long time. The house grew dark. I did not turn on the lights. I thought about the boy who used to sit on my lap and ask for stories about building skyscrapers. I thought about the teenager who worked summers carrying lumber on my sites, complaining about the heat, but spending his paychecks on gifts for his mother. Where had that boy gone? He had been swallowed by the entitlement. He had been eaten alive by the need to keep up appearances. He had married a woman who fed the beast instead of starving it. I was not doing this to hurt him. I told myself that. I repeated it like a mantra. I was doing this to break the cycle. If I bailed him out now, he would learn nothing. He would learn that fraud is a viable solution. He would learn that Daddy always fixes it. He had to hit the bottom. He had to feel the concrete. I picked up my phone. I sent a text to Megan. I know about the credit inquiry. I know about the loan application. Stop digging. I did not wait for a reply. I knew she would scream. I knew she would panic. They were trapped. They had the Hendersons arriving in hours. They had no money. They had no credit. And now they knew that I knew they were frauds. The game of pretend was over. I went to my closet. I took out the tuxedo I had bought. I brushed the lint off the lapel. Tomorrow night, I would walk into that house. I would not go as a guest. I would go as the owner. I would walk into the lie they had built, and I would turn on the lights. I checked the weather report. A blizzard was coming. Heavy snow, wind, bitter cold. It was fitting. A storm was coming for the Walsh family, and I was the lightning. The phone rang at exactly 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I was sitting in my kitchen polishing the toes of my dress shoes. I knew who it was before I looked at the screen. The timing was too perfect. The desperation was palpable even through the wireless signal. It was Megan. I let it ring 3 times. I wanted her to sweat. I wanted her to wonder if I had already left town, if I had already cut the line completely. On the 4th ring, I picked up. I did not say hello, I just listened. Bernard. Her voice was breathless. It was a performance. I could hear the tremor she was forcing into her tone, the manufactured wobble of a woman on the edge of tears. Bernard, please do not hang up. I held the phone to my ear. I imagined her standing in the kitchen of the mansion, trying to keep her voice down, so her parents in the living room would not hear her begging the man she had threatened to institutionalize less than 24 hours ago. I am here, Megan, I said. Oh, thank God. She let out a ragged sigh. Bernard, listen. We need to talk. Jason and I, we have been doing a lot of thinking. The last few days. The stress. The holidays. We lost our heads. You certainly did, I said. You lost your heads when you tried to declare me incompetent. You lost your heads when you tried to pawn a house you do not own. I know, and we are so sorry. She started to cry. It was a good cry, soft, feminine, designed to crack the defenses of an old man. We were just scared, Bernard. We are drowning, and we took it out on you. It was wrong. It was unforgivable. But we are family, and it is Christmas. I said nothing. I let her silence stretch. I let her sit in the discomfort of her own lies. My parents are here. She continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. The Hendersons. They just arrived. They are asking about you. They want to meet Jason's father. They want to meet the man who built the Walsh Empire. I raised an eyebrow. Suddenly I was the man who built an empire again. Not the senile old relic. Not the embarrassment. I thought I would make them uncomfortable, I said. I thought I didn't own a tuxedo. Oh, stop it! That was just Jason being stupid. You know how he gets. He tries too hard to impress them. But Bernard, we cannot have Christmas dinner without you. It is not right. There is an empty seat at the table. Please, please come. Just for dinner. Just for a few hours. Put everything else aside. For Jason. For me. For the family. I leaned back in my chair. I looked at the snow falling outside my window. It was a trap. It was a beautiful, glittering bear trap. Megan did not want me there for the turkey. She did not want me there for the carols. She wanted me there because she had run out of options. The hard money lender had turned them down. The bank had locked them out. The doctors had laughed at them. They had one card left to play. Social pressure. They wanted me in that room in front of the wealthy, influential Hendersons. They wanted to get me drunk on expensive wine. And then, at the perfect moment over dessert, perhaps Jason would pull out a document, a loan guarantee, a co-signer agreement, a bridge loan application, and he would ask me to sign it in front of his father-in-law. He would bank on my pride. He would bank on the fact that I would not want to cause a scene in front of strangers. He would bank on the fact that I would not want to admit that my son was a broke fraud in front of his wife family. He thought he could shame me into saving him. It was a bold strategy. It was reckless. And it was exactly the kind of hail Mary pass a desperate man throws in the fourth quarter. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. "You want me to come to dinner?" I asked. "Yes, please. 7 o'clock. Black tie. Just like we planned. We can start over, Bernard. We can put all this ugliness behind us." I looked at the tuxedo hanging on the door of my pantry. I looked at the legal file Leonard had prepared sitting on the counter. "Okay," I said. "Really?" Her voice jumped an octave. "You will come." "I will come," I said. "I would not miss it for the world." "Thank you, Bernard. Thank you. You are saving Christmas. You really are." "I am sure I am," I said. I hung up. I sat there for a moment, feeling the weight of the moment. They thought they had won. They thought the old man had folded. They thought they had reeled me back in with a few tears and a guilt trip. They did not know that I wasn't coming to save Christmas. I was coming to burn the tree down. I stood up and went to the bedroom. I took a shower. I scrubbed my skin until it was pink. I wanted to wash off the feeling of their desperation. I wanted to be clean for what came next. I shaved carefully. I trimmed my mustache. I splashed on the cologne Catherine used to buy me, the smell of sandalwood and old money. I went to the living room and took the tuxedo out of the garment bag. It was a midnight blue bespoke suit, Italian wool silk lapels. It cost more than Jason's first car. I put on the crisp white shirt. I fastened the pearl studs. I tied the bow tie. My fingers were nimble. I did not shake. I slid into the jacket. It fit like a second skin. It made me stand taller. It made me look like the predator I used to be before retirement softened my edges. I opened the safe in the floor of my closet. I took out the velvet box containing the Patek Philippe watch I had bought for myself when I sold the company. I strapped it to my wrist. I took out the gold money clip. I filled it with crisp $100 bills. I looked in the mirror. Old Barney the fisherman was gone. The man staring back at me was Bernard Walsh, the man who renegotiated steel contracts while eating a sandwich, the man who fired 300 people in a single afternoon to save a company. I walked to the kitchen table. I picked up the leather folder Leonard had given me. Inside were the eviction papers, the termination of lease notice, the proof of Jason fraud, the medical certificates proving my sanity. I slipped the folder into a discreet black briefcase. I walked out to my truck. The snow was falling harder now, covering the world in a blanket of white silence. My truck looked ridiculous next to my tuxedo, a workhorse carrying a king. I started the engine. The heater rattled, then roared to life. I drove slowly toward the wealthy side of town. The houses got bigger. The lights got brighter. The fences got higher. I turned onto the street where my money lived. I saw the house at the end of the cul-de-sac. It was glowing. Every window was lit. A wreath the size of a tractor tire hung on the front door. I pulled up to the curb. There were 2 other cars in the driveway, a Mercedes S-Class and a Bentley. The Hendersons. They had arrived in style. I parked my truck right behind the Bentley, blocking it in. I turned off the engine. I sat in the dark for a moment. I watched the shadows moving behind the curtains. I could see Jason. He was pacing. He was probably rehearsing his pitch. He was probably telling himself that one signature would fix everything, that he just needed to get me in the room. He did not understand that the room was already rigged. I checked my watch. 7:00 on the dot. I saw headlights in my rearview mirror. A sedan pulled up quietly and parked across the street. Leonard. Right on time. Behind him, a county sheriff cruiser rolled to a stop and killed its lights. The cavalry had arrived. I picked up my briefcase. I opened the truck door. The cold air hit my face sharp and bracing. I walked up the driveway. I could hear the crunch of snow under my dress shoes. I walked past the salt Jason still hadn't put down. I reached the front door. I paused. I listened. I could hear laughter inside. I could hear the clinking of crystal. I could hear Megan's voice, high and fake, laughing at something her father said. They were in there pretending everything was perfect. They were playing house in a burning building. I reached out and pressed the doorbell. The chime echoed through the house. A deep, rich sound. I adjusted my cuffs. I straightened my tie. I was not entering a home. I was entering a boardroom, and I held the controlling interest. The door opened. It was Jason. He was smiling a wide, frantic smile. He held a glass of scotch in one hand. He was sweating. Dad, you made it. He reached out to hug me. He tried to pull me into a conspiratorial embrace to seal the deal before I even stepped over the threshold. I did not hug him back. I stepped past him into the foyer. "Hello, Jason," I said. I looked around the grand entryway. The marble floors shone. The garland on the banister smelled of pine and cinnamon. Megan came rushing out of the dining room. She stopped when she saw me. Her eyes widened. She took in the tuxedo. She took in the watch. She took in the briefcase. She had expected the old man in the flannel shirt. She had expected the victim. She did not expect the boss. "Bernard," she stammered. "You look... wow." I looked at her. I did not smile. "Where are your parents, Megan?" I asked. "I do not want to keep them waiting." "They are in the living room," Jason said, closing the door behind me. "Come on in. Let me get you a drink. We have the good stuff tonight." I walked toward the living room. My footsteps echoed on the stone. I entered the room. An older couple sat on the velvet sofas. They looked like money. Old money. Hard money. Mr. Henderson stood up. He was tall with silver hair and a tan that spoke of winters in St. Bart's. Mrs. Henderson glittered with diamonds. "Bernard," Megan said, her voice tight. "These are my parents, Charles and Victoria Henderson." Charles stepped forward, offering his hand. "So this is the mystery man. We have heard so much about you. Jason tells us you are enjoying a quiet retirement." I took his hand. His grip was firm. Mine was firmer. "It has been quiet up until now," I said. Victoria smiled. A shark smile. "Well, we are so glad you could join us. We were just admiring this beautiful home. Jason has done so well for himself, hasn't he?" I looked at Jason. He was standing by the bar but pouring a drink. His hand shaking so bad the bottle rattled against the glass. He looked terrified. "He has certainly lived well," I said. Megan laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. "Oh, Bernard is so modest. He taught Jason everything he knows about real estate." I turned my gaze to Megan. "I taught him about building," I said. "I am not sure who taught him about financing." The air in the room shifted. Charles Henderson cocked his head. He was a businessman. He heard the edge in my voice. He sensed the tension radiating off his son-in-law. "Well," Charles said, "let us have a toast. to family, and to success. Jason rushed over with a tray of drinks. Here, Dad. Your usual. Scotch neat. I took the glass. I did not drink. To reality, I said, raising my glass. They all paused. They clinked glasses uncertainly. To reality, Charles repeated. We sat down. The conversation was strained. They talked about the weather. They talked about their flight. They talked about the opera. I sat in the wingback chair, my briefcase at my feet. I watched them. I waited. I knew the pitch was coming. I could see Jason building up to it. He kept glancing at Megan. She kept nodding imperceptibly. Finally, after 20 minutes of small talk, Jason cleared his throat. Actually, Charles' dad, while we are all here, I wanted to share some exciting news. An investment opportunity came up recently. A huge commercial development downtown. I am thinking of buying in. Here it comes. Charles looked interested. Really? Commercial real estate is tricky right now, Jason. You have to be liquid. Oh, I am liquid. Jason lied. But for a deal this size, the bank requires a guarantor. Just a formality, really, to expedite the closing before the end of the year. He turned to me. His eyes were pleading. He looked like a dog waiting to be kicked. Dad, I was hoping, since you have the history in the market, maybe you would co-sign with me. Just to get the paperwork through. It would mean a lot to keep it in the family. There it was. The trap. Sprung in front of the billionaires. If I said no, I looked like an unsupportive father. If I said yes, I signed my own death warrant. Megan leaned forward. It would be such a great legacy, Bernard. Jason wants to follow in your footsteps. I placed my glass on the table. I reached down and picked up my briefcase. I set it on my lap. I clicked the latches open. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I think there has been a misunderstanding, I said. Jason's smile faltered. What do you mean, Dad? I mean, I am not here to invest, Jason. I am here to divest. I pulled out the file. I pulled out the eviction notice. I pulled out the deed. Megan stood up. Bernard, what are you doing? Not now. Sit down, Megan, I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of authority. Charles Henderson looked at me. He looked at the papers. What is going on here, Bernard? I looked at him. Mr. Henderson, you are a businessman. You understand contracts. You understand ownership. Yes. Well, then you should know that your son-in-law does not own this house. He does not own the furniture you are sitting on. He does not own the car in the driveway. Jason lunged forward. Dad, stop. Please stop. I stood up. I held up the deed. I own this house. I bought it 4 years ago through a trust. Jason is a tenant. And as of 3 days ago, he is a delinquent tenant. The room went dead silent. Victoria Henderson gasped. I turned to Jason. You wanted me to sign a loan. You wanted to use my credit to cover your gambling debts, your failed startups, your lifestyle. I threw the papers on the coffee table. I am not signing a loan, Jason. I am serving you. I looked at the window. I nodded. The front door opened. Leonard walked in. The sheriff walked in behind him. Jason's face went white. He looked like he was going to vomit. I turned back to the Hendersons. I apologize for ruining your evening, but my son seems to have forgotten to pay his rent, and I have decided to stop enabling him. This house is being foreclosed on. Tonight. Merry Christmas. The dinner was a theater of the absurd. We sat around the mahogany table that I had paid for, eating roast duck on china that I had paid for, drinking a vintage Bordeaux that I had paid for. The only things in the room I had not purchased were the Hendersons themselves, though looking at the amount of jewelry draped over Victoria Henderson's neck, I suspected someone had paid a high price for her company as well. I sat at the head of the table. It was my right as the host, even if they thought I was merely a guest. Jason sat to my right, sweating through his dress shirt. Megan sat to my left, her eyes darting between her parents and the clock on the mantel. Charles Henderson dominated the conversation. He was a man who loved the sound of his own voice. He spoke of his yacht in the Mediterranean. He spoke of his summer home in the Hamptons. He spoke of the incompetence of his staff. He ate with his mouth open, a habit that money apparently could not correct. "And what do you do with your days now?" Bernard Charles asked, pointing his fork at me. "Jason tells us you dabble in fishing. How quaint." "I suppose when one has limited means, one must find simple pleasures." I cut a piece of duck. I chewed it slowly. "I find fishing to be very educational, Charles," I said. "It teaches you patience. It teaches you how to spot a bottom feeder. And it teaches you that sometimes the biggest fish are swimming right under your boat and you do not even know it." Victoria let out a tinkling, condescending laugh. "Oh, Bernard, you are quite the philosopher. We must get you out to the club sometime, although I am not sure if they accept day passes for non-members anymore." She looked at Megan. "It is so generous of you to look after him, Megan. It must be a burden having to support family members who did not plan for their future." I saw Megan flinch. She took a large gulp of wine. "We do what we can, Mother." Megan said, her voice tight. "Family is family." I looked at my son. He was staring at his plate. He was vibrating with anxiety. He knew what was coming. He knew the eviction notice was drafted. He knew I had the power to end his charade at any moment. But he still had hope. He still thought he could outmaneuver me. He cleared his throat. He stood up. "Actually, while we are all together, there is something I need to take care of." He walked over to the sideboard. He picked up a thick blue folder. My eyes narrowed. This was it. The Hail Mary pass. He walked back to the table. He placed the folder in front of me. He put a heavy gold fountain pen on top of it. "Dad, I know we are celebrating, but my lawyer sent this over this afternoon. It is just the renewal for the hazard insurance on the house. The rates are going up next year, and since your name is still technically attached to the original paperwork from 4 years ago, I need your signature to lock in the lower premium before the end of the year." He smiled. It was a terrible smile. It was the smile of a man standing on a trapdoor. "Just sign right there on the bottom line, Dad. It will only take a second. Then we can get to dessert." Megan made a soufflé. Megan leaned in. "Yes, Bernard. Just a quick signature. We do not want the house to be uninsured, do we? That would be irresponsible." Charles Henderson nodded sagely. "Always protect the asset, Bernard. Sign the papers. Do not hold up the evening with bureaucracy." I looked at the folder. I looked at the pen. Hazard insurance. That was the lie. It was a good lie. Boring, urgent, plausible. I picked up the pen. I felt the weight of it. Jason let out a breath. He thought he had me. He thought the pressure of the rich in-laws, the wine, the setting, would make me compliant. He thought I was the old dog who would roll over for a treat. I reached into my breast pocket. I pulled out my reading glasses. I unfolded them slowly. I put them on. Jason shifted his weight. "Dad, you do not need to read it. It is just standard boilerplate. Legal jargon. I already reviewed it." "I am sure you did, Jason," I said. "But I always read the fine print. It is a habit from my days of having limited means." I opened the folder. The first page was a cover sheet. Standard. Innocuous. I turned the page. The document was not about insurance. It was not about premiums. The header was bold. It was typed in all caps. Deed of transfer and durable power of attorney. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. It was not just a loan application. It was theft. Absolute, total theft. The document outlined the transfer of the property title from the trust to Jason Walsh, but it went further, much further. The second section was a durable power of attorney, granting Jason and Megan full control over my financial assets, my medical decisions, and my estate. It stated that due to my declining capacity, I was voluntarily surrendering my rights to my son. They were trying to trick me into signing away my life between the main course and dessert. I read the clauses. They were vicious. They gave them the right to sell my personal residence. They gave them the right to access my offshore accounts. They gave them the right to commit me to a facility if they deemed it necessary for my safety. I looked up. Jason was watching me. His eyes were wide, pleading. He was begging me silently to just sign it, to just die, to just get out of the way so he could have the money he felt he deserved. Megan was holding her breath. Her knuckles were white on the tablecloth. Charles Henderson was checking his watch, bored. I closed the folder. I took off my glasses. I placed them on the table. I picked up the folder. I weighed it in my hand. "Insurance," I said softly. "Yes," Jason's voice cracked. "Just insurance." I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You think I am stupid," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a razor. "You think because I drive an old truck and wear flannel that I cannot read. You think because I love you I am blind. Dad, what are you doing? Just sign it." I threw the folder. I did not toss it. I hurled it. It spun across the table, knocking over the crystal decanter of red wine. The decanter shattered. Wine exploded across the white tablecloth, soaking the roast duck, splashing onto Victoria Henderson's sequined dress. Victoria screamed. She jumped up, batting at the red stains. "Bernard, are you insane?" "Look what you have done," I ignored her. I leaned over the table, bracing my hands on the wine-soaked linen. I looked straight at Jason. "That is not insurance," I roared. "That is a death warrant, transfer of deed, power of attorney. You tried to trick me into signing away my freedom in front of witnesses. You tried to steal my life while I was eating your food." Jason backed away. His face was gray. "Dad, no, it is not like that. I can explain." "There is nothing to explain," I shouted. "You are a thief, you are a liar, and you are a coward." I turned to Charles Henderson. He was standing now, looking furious. "You want to know what I do with my days, Charles? You want to know how I spend my time? I spend my time cleaning up the messes your son-in-law creates. I spend my time paying for this lifestyle that you admire so much." "What are you talking about?" Charles sputtered. "Jason is a partner. He owns this house." "He owns nothing," I pointed a finger at Jason. "He is a fraud. He has never paid a mortgage payment in his life. I pay it. I bought this house. I bought the car in the driveway. I bought the suit on his back." Megan stood up. She was shaking. "Stop it. Stop it right now. You are ruining everything. I am ruining it," I laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. "I am not ruining it, Megan. I am ending it." I reached down and picked up the soggy document from the mess on the table. I held it up. "You wanted me to sign this. You wanted control." I ripped the document in half. The sound of the thick paper tearing was loud in the silence. I ripped it again, and again. I threw the pieces like confetti into the air. "I am not signing anything. And for the record, you are standing in my house." "Your house," Victoria gasped. "Yes, my house. The deed is in my trust, and as of yesterday the lease is terminated." I looked at Jason. He was leaning against the wall, looking like he was going to vomit. "You tried to have me committed, Jason," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "You tried to steal my mind, and tonight, you tried to steal my soul." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the velvet box with the Rolex, the watch I had bought for him, the watch my father had worn. I looked at it. It was a symbol of legacy, of passing the torch. I looked at my son. There was no one there to pass it to. I dropped the box into the puddle of wine on the table. "Merry Christmas, Jason," I said. I turned to the door, but I was not done. I had one more card to play. I had one more person to introduce to the party. I walked to the front door. I threw it open. Leonard was standing on the porch. Behind him was the sheriff. The red and blue lights of the cruiser were flashing, reflecting off the snow, painting the manicured lawn in colors of emergency. "Come in, gentlemen," I said loudly. "The tenants are just leaving." The sheriff stepped into the foyer. He was a big man. He filled the space. He looked at the scene in the dining room. The shattered glass, the spilled wine, the screaming woman. He took off his hat. "Evening, folks. I have a court order here for immediate eviction." Jason looked at the sheriff. He looked at me. And finally, the reality broke him. He slid down the wall. He put his head in his hands, and he began to weep. It was not the cry of a man who was sorry. It was the cry of a child who had been caught. I watched him for a second. I felt nothing. The cord was cut. I turned to Leonard. "Handle it," I said. I walked out into the cold night air. The snow was still falling. It was beautiful. It covered the corruption. It covered the lies. I got into my truck. I did not look back at the house. I did not look back at the lights. I drove away. I drove toward the darkness of the highway. I had nowhere to be, no one to see. But for the first time in 4 years, I could breathe. The sheriff stood by the door, his hand resting casually near his belt, a silent sentinel of the law. Jason was on the floor, weeping into his hands. But Megan was not done. She was a fighter, a cornered animal who refused to see the cage closing around her. She stepped over her husband. She marched up to me, her face twisted into a snarl that cracked her heavy makeup. "Your house," she screamed. Her voice was shrill, shattering the stunned silence of the room. "You are lying. You are a senile old man. You are a leech, Bernard, a leech. You come here in a rented tuxedo trying to steal our thunder because you are jealous. You are jealous that your son is successful. You are jealous that he has a life you could only dream of." She turned to her parents, arms wide, appealing to the jury. "Look at him. He lives in a shack. He drives a truck that belongs in a junkyard. He has not bought a new pair of shoes in 5 years. And he wants you to believe he owns this estate. He is sick. He has dementia. Jason has been supporting him for years. That is where our money went. We have been paying for his medical bills, his food, his very existence." I watched her. I watched the lies spill out of her mouth like black oil. She was good. She almost believed it herself. Victoria Henderson looked uncertain. She looked at my tuxedo, then at my face, then at her daughter. The seed of doubt was planted. Megan was playing the victim card perfectly. "You are a parasite," Bernard. Megan spat at me. "You are nothing but a burden. And now you try to ruin Christmas with this theater. Get out. Get out before we press charges for trespassing." I did not move. I did not blink. I looked at Leonard. "Show them," I said. Leonard stepped forward. He placed his briefcase on the dining table right next to the puddle of spilled wine. He clicked the latches open. He pulled out a thick stack of bound documents. He laid them out with the precision of a blackjack dealer laying down a royal flush. He picked up the first document. "Mrs. Walsh," Leonard said, his voice calm, professional, devoid of emotion. "You claim that you and your husband have been supporting Mr. Walsh. You claim that he is a financial burden." He opened the file. He spun it around so Charles Henderson could read it. "This is a forensic accounting of the last 48 months of bank transfers." Charles leaned forward. He put on his reading glasses. Leonard pointed to the columns. "Here you will see a monthly incoming wire transfer of $6,500. It originates from the personal trust of Bernard Walsh. It is deposited into the operating account of Premier Holdings. Charles ran his finger down the page, and here Leonard continued. You will see the corresponding credit to the tenant ledger for the property located at 12 Oak Creek Drive. Tenant listed Jason Walsh. Leonard looked at Megan. For 4 years, Jason Walsh has not paid a single penny in rent. Not 1 cent. The entire cost of housing, including taxes, insurance, and maintenance, has been paid by Bernard Walsh. Megan's face went slack. Those are fake. You forged them. Leonard ignored her. He turned the page. Furthermore, he said, here are the credit card statements for the American Express Platinum card issued to Jason Walsh. He laid out the statements. They were thick. The primary account holder is Bernard Walsh. Jason is an authorized user. The bill is paid in full every month via autopay from Bernard Walsh investment account. Leonard pointed to a line item. Last month, $4,000 at Saks Fifth Avenue, $3,000 at the Ritz-Carlton, $2,000 at a Michelin star restaurant in New York. He looked at Victoria Henderson. I believe that was the weekend you visited them in the city, Mrs. Henderson. Bernard paid for your hotel. He paid for your dinner. He paid for the dress your daughter is wearing right now. Victoria looked down at her daughter's dress. She looked like she wanted to scrub her skin. I did not know, she whispered. They told us. Jason said his firm had a corporate account. Jason does not have a firm, Leonard said. Jason has been unemployed for 8 months. The room seemed to tilt. The reality they had constructed was evaporating. But Leonard was not done. He reached into the briefcase again. He pulled out a police report. It was fresh. The stamp on the top was dated today. He placed it in front of Jason, who was still huddled on the floor. And then there is the matter of the vehicle, Leonard said. He pointed to the window, to the gleaming white Porsche 911 parked in the driveway next to my truck. It was Jason, pride and joy. He washed it every Sunday. He posted pictures of it constantly. A beautiful car, Leonard noted. $120,000. He looked at Charles. Jason told everyone he bought it with a bonus. A signing bonus for a big deal. Charles nodded slowly. Yes. He said he closed the merger. There was no merger, Leonard said. And there was no bonus. He tapped the police report. 3 months ago, Jason Walsh walked into the dealership. He filled out a lease application. He listed Bernard Walsh as the cosigner. He provided Bernard Walsh's social security number. And then he signed Bernard Walsh's name. I saw Jason flinch on the floor. He curled tighter into himself. Forgery, Leonard said. Identity theft. Grand larceny. I spoke up then. My voice was low. I found out yesterday, I said. When the credit alert hit my phone. I could have called the police then. I could have had him arrested in the dealership parking lot. I looked at Megan. I waited. I wanted to see if he would tell me. I wanted to see if he would confess. Instead, he uninvited me to dinner. Megan was shaking her head back and forth, back and forth. No. No. He told me you signed it. He told me you wanted him to have it. I signed nothing, I said. Leonard placed the last document on the table. It was the deed. The heavy cream paper with the gold seal. And finally Leonard said, the house itself. He smoothed the paper. You have all been laboring under the impression that this is Jason House, or perhaps that it is Bernard House to give. He pointed to the owner line. The property is held by the Catherine Walsh Charitable Trust. Catherine, Mrs. Henderson whispered. My late wife, I said. Leonard continued. The trust was established to generate revenue for hospice care facilities. The rent from this property was supposed to go to dying patients who cannot afford care. He looked at Jason with pure disgust. Bernard allowed Jason to live here under a rent-to-own agreement. The rent payments were supposed to go into the charity fund. But since Jason could not pay, Bernard paid the trust himself. He has been effectively donating $6,000 a month to his wife charity, just to keep his son housed. Leonard closed the briefcase. The snap of the locks was like a gavel coming down. Jason Walsh is not a homeowner. He is a charity case. And he has been stealing from a fund meant for the terminally ill. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy. It was suffocating. Charles Henderson stood there, his face turning a dark shade of purple. He looked at the documents spread out on the table. The forensic accounting. The police report. The deed. He looked at the wine stains on the tablecloth. He looked at his daughter. "Megan," he said. His voice was a growl. "Is this true?" Megan tried to speak. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at Jason. She looked at me. She looked at the sheriff. "Is it true?" Charles roared. Megan crumbled. She fell into the chair, burying her face in her hands. We needed," she sobbed. Charles Henderson turned to Jason. He walked over to where his son-in-law lay on the floor. He kicked him. Not hard, but with enough contempt to bruise a soul. "Get up," Charles barked. Jason scrambled to his feet. He wiped his nose on his sleeve. He looked pathetic, a boy in a man-suit. "You told me you were a partner," Charles said, his voice shaking with rage. "You told me you were managing assets. You told me this house was paid off. I was going to..." Jason stammered. "You are a liar," Charles said. "You are a fraud. And you are a thief." He turned to me. He looked me in the eye. For the first time all night there was no condescension. There was only shame. "Mr. Walsh," Charles said, "I owe you an apology." I nodded. "You do," I said, "but not as much as they do." I looked at Jason and Megan. They were broken. The facade was gone. The paint had peeled away, and all that was left was the rot underneath. The sheriff stepped forward. He cleared his throat. "Mr. Walsh," he said, addressing me, "do you want to press charges regarding the vehicle?" I looked at Jason. He stopped breathing. He looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. He knew that if I said yes, he was going away. He knew that forgery over $100,000 was mandatory prison time. I looked at the Porsche out the window. It was just metal. It was just a symbol of his vanity. I looked back at my son. "Not tonight, Sheriff," I said. "Tonight is Christmas Eve. I will not send my son to jail on Christmas." Jason let out a sob of relief, but I continued, my voice hardening. "I want the keys, now, and I want the car off my property." Jason fumbled in his pocket. He pulled out the key fob. He handed it to the sheriff with a shaking hand. "And the house keys," I said. He dug into his other pocket. He placed the house key on the table next to the ruined insurance papers. Leonard picked them up. "You have 72 hours to vacate," Leonard said. "But given the circumstances, I suggest you leave tonight." Charles Henderson walked over to Victoria. "Come on," he said. "Get your coat." "But Dad," Megan wailed. "Where are we going?" "We are going to a hotel," Charles said. "And tomorrow we are going back to New York." Megan stood up. "I am coming with you. I cannot stay here." Charles stopped. He looked at his daughter. He looked at the mess she had helped create. He looked at the way she had treated me. "No," he said. What Megan gasped. "You made your bed," Megan, Charles said. "You lied to us for years. You helped him run this scam. You humiliated this man in his own home." He gestured to me. "You are staying with your husband. You are going to figure this out. Do not call me for money. Do not call me for a lawyer. You are cut off." He took his wife's arm. They walked to the door. Mr. Henderson stopped in front of me. He extended his hand again. This time it was respectful. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Walsh. I am sorry for the intrusion." "Merry Christmas, Charles," I said. They walked out. The door closed. The room was quiet again. Just me, Leonard, the sheriff, and the two people who had tried to destroy me. Jason and Megan stood in the wreckage of their dinner party. The food was cold. The wine was spilled. The guests were gone. And the landlord was still standing. I picked up my briefcase. I picked up my glasses. I turned to the sheriff. "Officer, if they are not off the property in 20 minutes, arrest them for trespassing." "Yes, sir." I walked to the door. I did not say goodbye. There was nothing left to say. I walked out into the snow. The air was crisp and clean. I got into my truck. I watched the tow truck pull into the driveway to take the Porsche. I watched the lights go out in the house one by one as they packed their bags. I drove away. I had lost a son that night, but I had regained my dignity. And as I drove through the silent, snowy streets, I realized that for the first time in a long time I was looking forward to the future. A future where I did not have to hide who I was. A future where I did not have to pay for love. It was a cold night, but inside I felt warm. The silence in the room was broken by a sound sharp and violent like a whip cracking. Charles Henderson had moved across the Persian rug with a speed that defied his age. He grabbed Jason by the lapels of his tuxedo and hauled him up from the floor. Then he slapped him. It was not a gentlemanly slap. It was a backhand strike fueled by humiliation and rage. Jason's head snapped to the side. A trickle of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. "You lied to me," Charles roared. His face was purple. The veins in his neck bulged against his silk collar. "You sat in my club in Manhattan. You drank my scotch. And you looked me in the eye and told me you were a self-made man." Jason tried to speak. He tried to raise his hands to protect himself. "Please, Charles. I can explain. It is complicated. The assets are just tied up." "There are no assets," Charles screamed. He shoved Jason back against the wall. A painting fell. The glass shattered. "You told me you owned a tech firm. You told me you developed the algorithm. You told me you were preparing for an IPO in the spring." I watched from the center of the room. I did not intervene. I did not feel the urge to protect him. For 30 years, I had stepped in front of every bullet fired at my son. Tonight, I let him stand in the line of fire. Megan was sobbing in the corner. She did not try to stop her father. She knew better. She knew that the only thing Charles Henderson hated more than losing money was looking like a fool. And Jason had made him look like the biggest fool in New York. "You said the house was paid off," Charles spat. "You said the car was a bonus. You said the company was yours." "It is mine," Jason wheezed. "I am the CEO. I run the day-to-day. Dad he just helped with the seed money." I stepped forward. The sound of my dress shoes on the marble floor was heavy and deliberate. "Stop lying, Jason," I said. "Just stop. It is over." The curtain has fallen. I turned to Charles. I looked at the man who had spent the last 4 hours talking down to me. He is not the CEO, Charles, and he did not develop any algorithm. Jason's eyes went wide with panic. "Dad, don't. Please. Not that. Anything but that." He begged me with his eyes. He could handle losing the house. He could handle losing the car. But he could not handle losing the one thing he had built his entire identity around. His title. I ignored him. I looked at Charles. 5 years ago, Jason came to me. He had been fired from 3 different firms. No one would hire him. He was unemployable. But he wanted to marry your daughter. He wanted to look like a success. I took a breath. This was the hardest truth to tell. This was the secret I had kept even from myself. So I built him a sandbox. I created a shell company, Walsh Tech Solutions. I hired a team of actual developers to do the work. And I installed Jason in the corner office. Megan stopped crying. She looked up. Her mascara was running down her face. "What are you talking about, Bernard? I have been to his office. I have seen his staff." "You saw actors, Megan," I said. "You saw employees I paid to nod at your husband. You saw a play. I turned back to Jason. His salary of $300,000 a year. I paid that. From my personal account. The quarterly bonuses. I paid those. The business trips to Tokyo and London. I funded them so he could feel important. So he could feel like a man. I let the words hang in the air. He does not work, Charles. He sits in an office I pay for playing video games and signing paperwork that goes nowhere. He is not a tech mogul. He is a man on an allowance. A very expensive allowance that I have maintained to keep him from feeling like a failure. Jason slid down the wall until he hit the floor. He pulled his knees to his chest. He looked small. He looked like a child who had been stripped of his costume. Charles Henderson looked at his son-in-law with a mixture of horror and revulsion. You mean to tell me, Charles said, his voice shaking, that my daughter is married to a man who has never earned $1 in his life? I mean to tell you, I said, that your daughter is married to a man who is entirely a construction of my bank account. And as of tonight, the construction project is finished. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out my phone. I dialed a number. I put it on speaker. The room was silent. Everyone listened. A voice answered. Hello, Mr. Walsh. Hello, Leonard, I said. Are you still in the car? I am right outside. Execute Order 66, Leonard. Dissolve Walsh Tech Solutions. Terminate all contracts. And cut the payroll. Done, Leonard said. The email just went out to the staff. The servers are being wiped as we speak. I hung up. I looked down at Jason. You are fired. It was 2 words. Simple. Clean. But they hit him harder than the slap. You cannot do that, Jason whispered. It is my life. It is who I am. It was never who you were, I said. It was who I bought. And I am done paying for it. Charles Henderson turned away from Jason. He looked at him like he was something he had stepped in on the sidewalk. You are pathetic, Charles said. You lied to my face for 3 years. You let me invest in your phantom company. I froze. I did not know that. You invested, I asked. Charles nodded, his face pale. 200,000. He said it was a pre-IPO bridge round. I looked at Jason. He buried his face in his hands. He stole from you, Charles, I said. The company does not take outside investment. It is a holding company. If he took your money, he pocketed it. Charles let out a roar of rage. He looked around the room for something to throw. He settled for a heavy crystal vase on the mantel. He hurled it at the wall above Jason's head. I am calling the district attorney. Charles shouted. I am going to have you buried under the jail. Megan stood up. She walked over to her husband. She looked down at him. I thought she might comfort him. I thought she might show some shred of loyalty. Instead, she took off her wedding ring. It was a 3-carat diamond. I paid for that too. She threw it at him. It bounced off his chest. You are a loser, she hissed. You are a broke, lying loser. She turned to her parents. Take me home. Please, just take me away from here. Victoria Henderson grabbed her fur coat. Come, darling. We are leaving. We are going to the 4 Seasons. We will call the divorce lawyers in the morning. They moved toward the door. A phalanx of wealth and judgment retreating from the contamination zone. Mr. Henderson stopped in front of me. Mr. Walsh, he said, his voice clipped. I will expect your cooperation in the prosecution. You will have it, I said. They walked out. The door did not slam this time. It clicked shut with a finality that echoed in the empty hallway. The room was quiet. The sheriff stood by the entrance looking uncomfortable. Leonard was outside waiting in the car. It was just me and my son. Jason sat on the floor amidst the ruins of his life. The spilled wine, the shattered glass, the broken lies. He looked up at me. His eyes were red. His face was wet with tears and snot. Why, he whispered. Why did you do this? Why tonight? I walked over to him. I did not kneel, I stood tall. I looked down at the man I had created. Because you uninvited me, Jason. He laughed. A high, hysterical sound. Because of Christmas. You destroyed my life because of Christmas dinner. No, I said. Not because of dinner. Because of what it meant. I pointed to the door. You stood there 3 days ago. You looked at me. You looked at the man who wiped your tears and paid your debts and loved you more than life itself. And you decided I was not enough. You decided I was a prop that did not fit your set design. I leaned closer. You were ashamed of me, Jason. You were ashamed of the hands that built this house. You were ashamed of the work that paid for your suit. You wanted the money, but you did not want the father. Jason sobbed. I am sorry, Dad. I am sorry. I was scared. I just wanted them to like me. I know, I said softly. And that is why I had to stop you. You were drowning, Jason. You were drowning in debt and lies and pretension. If I let you keep going, you would have ended up in prison or dead. I looked around the room. I stripped you bare, son. I took away the house. I took away the car. I took away the job. I took away the wife who only loved your wallet. I stepped back. Now you have nothing. And having nothing is the only place you can start to build something real. I turned to the sheriff. Give him 10 minutes to pack a bag, then lock it up. I walked to the foyer. I picked up my coat. Dad. Jason called out. Dad, where are you going? I stopped. I did not look back. I am going home, Jason. To my small house. To my quiet life. What about me? What am I supposed to do? I opened the door. The cold wind swirled in. You figure it out. I walked out onto the porch. I walked down the steps. I walked past the sheriff cruiser. I got into my truck. I started the engine. I looked at the house one last time. The lights were still on. The Christmas tree was still twinkling in the window. It looked like a perfect holiday card. But inside it was hollow. I put the truck in gear. I drove away. I did not feel triumph. I did not feel joy. I felt a deep aching sadness, but I also felt relief. The cord was cut. The weight was gone. I was alone. But for the first time in years, I was not being dragged down. I drove into the night, leaving the ruins of my sun fantasy behind me. Tomorrow, the sun would rise. Tomorrow, the house would be boarded up. Tomorrow, Jason would wake up in a cheap motel room with nothing but the truth. It was the best Christmas gift I could have given him. 3 months passed since the night the lights went out at the mansion. The winter thawed into a wet, gray spring. The snow that had covered the lies melted away, leaving the bare, hard ground exposed. My life returned to the quiet rhythm I had fought so hard to protect. I woke up early. I drank my coffee. I went fishing. But the silence in my house felt different now. It was not the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of peace, Paul. I heard about the divorce through Leonard. He called me on a Tuesday morning while I was fixing the fence in my backyard. The paperwork had been filed in New York. Megan did not waste time. As soon as the money dried up, her love evaporated like a puddle in the sun. She cited irreconcilable differences. The difference being that she wanted a millionaire and she got a fraud. Leonard told me the Hendersons had scrubbed the internet. They paid a reputation management firm to bury any mention of the wedding. They erased Jason from their family history as if he were a clerical error. They cut Megan off too for the embarrassment of bringing a pauper into their circle. She was back in the city hunting for a new husband, but she was doing it without the Henderson Trust Fund. They devoured each other. It was inevitable. I did not ask about Jason. I did not check on him. I needed to let the silence do the heavy lifting. I needed him to feel the weight of his own existence without my shoulder supporting it. But I knew he would come. The desperate always return to the well even when they know it is dry. He showed up on a rainy afternoon in March. I saw him pull up to the curb. He was not driving the Porsche. He was driving a beat-up sedan with a rusted door panel and a cracked windshield. It looked like the kind of car you buy for $500 and pray it starts in the morning. I watched him get out. He looked older. The boyish charm was gone, stripped away by 90 days of reality. He had lost weight. His expensive haircut had grown out shaggy and unkempt. He was wearing a uniform, a blue windbreaker with the logo of a courier service on the chest. He walked up the path. He did not swagger. He trudged. He looked at the ground. He looked at the porch where he had stood 3 months ago and demanded $50,000. I opened the door before he knocked. I stood in the frame blocking the entrance. "Hello, Jason." He looked up. His eyes were rimmed with red. He looked exhausted. "Hi, Dad." He stood there in the rain. He did not ask to come in. He knew better. "I heard about Megan," I said. He let out a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah. She didn't stick around long after the eviction. She said I tricked her. She said I wasted her prime years. She took the jewelry. She took the designer bags. She left the rest. It is hard to build a life on a foundation of lies, Jason. It usually collapses." He wiped the rain from his face. "I am living in a basement apartment on the south side. It smells like mold. The heating barely works. It sounds like it is within your budget. I am driving a delivery route. 10 hours a day. Packages, food, whatever. My boss is a kid 10 years younger than me. He yells at me if I am 5 minutes late. It sounds like honest work. I hate it," he burst out. The facade cracked. The entitlement bled through. "Dad, I hate it. I am exhausted. My back hurts. I can barely pay the rent. I am eating ramen noodles. I used to run a company." "You used to pretend to run a company," I corrected him. "You used to sit in a chair I paid for. Now you are working. That is the difference." He looked at me with pleading eyes, the same eyes he used when he was 10 and broke a window. "Dad, please." I learned my lesson. I get it. I really do. I was arrogant. I was ungrateful. But this is too much. I cannot live like this. I am not built for this. You are built for whatever you have to do to survive, Jason. That is what being a man is. He took a step forward. He reached out a hand. "Just help me get back on my feet. I am not asking for the mansion. I am not asking for the Porsche. Just a loan. Just enough to get a decent apartment. Maybe some seed money to start a small business. Real estate. I could flip houses. I learned from you." I looked at his hand. It was calloused. It was dirty. It was the first time in his life I had seen his hands look like working hands. But his mind was still broken. He still thought there was a shortcut. He still thought he could flip his way out of the hole. I shook my head. "No. Dad." He started to cry. It was a jagged, ugly sound. "Please. I am your son. I am sorry. I am so sorry for everything, for Christmas, for the fraud, for everything. Just forgive me. Please forgive me and help me." I looked at him weeping in the rain. I felt the old instinct rise up, the instinct to fix it, to write the check, to make the pain go away. But then I remembered the look on his face when he handed me the insurance papers. I remembered the way he looked at me when he told me I wasn't welcome at dinner. If I helped him now, I would destroy him. I would validate the idea that tears are currency. I would teach him that consequences are temporary if you beg hard enough. I stepped out onto the porch. I stood toe to toe with him. "I do not have a check for you, Jason." He looked at me, his face wet with rain and tears. "Do you hate me? he whispered. Is that it? Do you hate me for what I did? I put my hands in my pockets. I do not hate you. I love you enough to let you suffer. He flinched as if I had hit him. Forgiveness is God work, Jason. I said, my voice steady. My job is different. My job is to teach you the lesson I forgot to teach you for 30 years. I leaned closer. You are responsible for yourself. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to bail you out. The mold in your apartment is your mold. The boss who yells at you is your boss. The life you have right now is the life you earned, but I can't do it alone. He sobbed. You have to, I said. Because as long as you think there is a safety net, you will never learn to fly. You will just keep falling and waiting for me to catch you. I am done catching you. I stepped back. I put my hand on the door. Go back to your apartment, Jason. Go back to your job, pay your rent, save your money, and maybe in a year or 2 or 5 when you have built something that is actually yours, come back and see me. And if I don't make it? He asked, his voice hollow. Then you didn't make it, I said. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I stood in the hallway listening to him cry on the other side. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. It was harder than building the skyscrapers. It was harder than burying Catherine. To hear your child in pain and do nothing is an agony that has no name. But I knew it was necessary. Eventually, the crying stopped. I heard his footsteps walk away. I heard the engine of the beat-up sedan start. It sputtered, then caught. He drove away. I went to the window. I watched the taillights fade into the rain. He was alone. He was broke. He was miserable. But he was driving his own car. He was going to his own apartment. He was living his own life. For the first time in 38 years, Jason Walsh was an independent man. I touched the glass. Good luck, son, I whispered. I turned away from the window. The house was quiet. I had one more thing to do, one final piece of business to close the book on the past. I went to my study. I picked up the phone. I called Leonard. It is done, I said. How did he take it? Leonard asked. About as well as you would expect. But he left. Bernard. Are you okay? I will be, I said. Now let us talk about the property. The mansion. Yes. Is it sold? We have an offer. Cash. Above asking. Take it, I said. And the proceeds. What do you want to do with the money? It is a significant sum, 1.6 million after fees. I looked at the photo of Catherine on my desk. She was smiling. She always wanted to help people. She always wanted to leave a mark that wasn't made of concrete and glass. I do not want it, I said. I do not want a dime of it. That money is poisoned. It ruined my son. I want to wash it clean. What do you have in mind? Build it, Leonard. Build the center. The Catherine Walsh Center. Yes. For the elderly. For the ones whose families forgot them. For the ones who have nowhere to go, use every penny. Make it beautiful. Make it safe. And put her name on the door. Consider it done. I hung up. I sat back in my chair. The rain drummed against the roof. I had lost a son, but I had found a purpose. I had lost the illusion of a perfect family, but I had found the truth. And the truth was quiet. The truth was peaceful. I closed my eyes. I finally rested. 6 months later, I stood in front of a construction site on the east side of the city. It used to be a derelict warehouse, a sore thumb in a forgotten neighborhood. Now it was alive. Scaffolding wrapped around the brick facade like a steel skeleton. Men in hard hats shouted over the roar of mixers and saws. Dust hung in the air, gold in the afternoon sun. Leonard Katz stood next to me. He was wearing a hard hat that looked ridiculous with his Italian suit. He held a roll of blueprints. "It is ahead of schedule, Bernard," he shouted over the noise. "We should be open by November." I looked at the building. I looked at the sign out front. The Catherine Walsh Center for Dignified Living. It was not a nursing home. It was not a facility where people went to wait for the end. It was a community. Small apartments, common gardens, a library, a workshop, a place for people who had worked hard all their lives and had nothing to show for it but calluses and memories. People like the man I pretended to be for 5 years. "I spent every dime, Leonard," I said. "Every dime," Leonard confirmed. "The proceeds from the mansion sale. The rest of your liquid assets. You kept enough for your pension and your travel fund, but the rest is in the mortar." Good. I felt lighter than I had in a decade. The money that had poisoned my family was gone. It was transmuted into something that could not be stolen, something that could not be gambled away in Vegas or wasted on designer handbags. It was concrete. It was shelter. It was Catherine legacy. I turned away from the noise. "I have a plane to catch, Leonard." He shook my hand. "Send me a postcard." "And Bernard." "Yes." "Do not answer the phone." I smiled. "I won't." I walked to my truck, but I did not get in the driver's side. I opened the passenger door. Doris was sitting there. She was reading a paperback novel. She looked up and smiled. Doris was 68. She was a retired librarian who lived 3 doors down from my small house. She had short silver hair and eyes that saw everything. She was the one who brought me soup when I had the flu last winter. She was the one who sat on my porch and listened to me talk about fishing, without once asking what I did for a living or how much I had in the bank. She liked me for me. It was a novel concept. "Ready for an adventure, Bernard?" she asked. I climbed in. Ready as I will ever be. We drove to the airport. I left the truck in long-term parking. I did not care if I ever saw it again. We walked through the terminal. We did not turn right toward economy. We turned left toward the first-class lounge. Doris' eyes widened as we boarded the plane. It was a Dreamliner heading to Rome. Our seats were not seats. They were pods. Leather. Private. Champagne was already waiting. "Bernard," she whispered, "this is too much. You said we were going on a trip. You did not say we were flying like royalty." I took my jacket off. I settled into the seat. "I spent 40 years building castles for other people, Doris. I think it is time I lived in one for a few hours." She clinked her glass against mine. "To Italy," she said. "To new chapters," I replied. The plane taxied to the runway. The engines roared. I felt the pressure push me back into the seat. I looked out the window. The city fell away. The skyscrapers I built became toys. The mansion I bought became a speck. The life I had lived became history. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. I sighed. I reached into my pocket. I pulled it out. There was a text message on the screen. It was from Jason. "Dad, I got a promotion. I am a shift supervisor now. It is only $2 more an hour, but it is something. I am trying, Dad. I really am. Can we talk? Please, I miss you." I stared at the words. I felt a tug in my chest, a phantom pain. The instinct of a father to say, "Good job." The instinct to say, "I am proud of you." But I looked closer. "I miss you." He did not miss me. He missed the safety. He missed the ease. He was lonely, and his life was hard, and he wanted his father to make it soft again. If I answered him, I would undo everything. If I answered him, the 3 months of silence would be wasted. He was working. He was surviving. He was climbing his own ladder rung by painful rung. He was finally becoming a man, and the only way to keep him a man was to stay a ghost. I looked at Doris. She was watching me. She saw the shadow cross my face. Everything okay, Bernard? I looked at the phone one last time. I thought about the warehouse in Vegas. I thought about the forged signature on the car lease. I thought about the eviction notice on Christmas Eve. I pressed the power button. The screen went black. But that was not enough. I flipped the phone over. I pried off the back case. I took out the battery. I slid the small SIM card out of its slot. It was a tiny piece of plastic and gold. It held my number. It held my connection to the past. It held the pathway for Jason to reach me. I held it between my thumb and forefinger. I am fine, Doris, I said. I am better than fine. I snapped the SIM card in half. It made a small, sharp sound, like a twig breaking in a winter forest. I dropped the pieces into my empty champagne glass. I put the dead phone back in my pocket. The plane banked. We broke through the clouds. The sun flooded the cabin, blinding and bright. I reached out and took Doris' hand. I lost a spoiled son, I said, looking at the clouds. But I found my life back. The stewardess came by with a bottle. More champagne, sir. Yes, I said. Fill it up. We have a long way to go. And for the first time in my life, I was in no rush to get back. We often make the fatal mistake of confusing financial support with love. For years, I thought I was protecting my son by paying his way, but I was only robbing him of his own character. I learned that true parental love isn't about shielding our children from reality. It is about giving them the strength to face it. By taking away the safety net, I forced Jason to find his own footing. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was necessary. Respect must be earned, not bought, and a life built on handouts is nothing more than a house of cards waiting to fall. If you believe that dignity is worth more than money, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to use tough love to save someone you care about? I want to hear your story.